Hello. Today, I have a recently acquired treasure from the past. This is a BusCard 2, made by Batteries Included. No, it doesn't need batteries. Batteries Included started primarily as a calculator store, from what I remember. And they got their name, or they decided on their name, because they indeed were going to include batteries with the things that they sold that needed batteries, because most of the things needed batteries. But then along came other things that they did, including making the BusCard 2. And yes, there was a BusCard 1, although it was just called the BusCard. And what did it do? Well, mostly what it did, it had some dip switches on the top. It mostly allowed you to connect a Commodore 64 to an IEEE disk drive, such as a 4040, or an 8050, or an 8250, or, wait for it, an SFD 1001. So, this little wire would hook up inside, I don't remember where, but it would just hook onto a chip. No soldering required, just there's a little clip. Boing, boing, boing. And on it would go into the, I guess it was the cartridge port. And this long row here was the IEEE port, and this thing here with their special cable, which I don't know if I've ever seen one, but I suppose they exist, would allow you to hook up to a parallel printer. So, the main thing that this was for was really, things were mighty expensive back then. So, there were a lot of pet people who had lots of accessories, who didn't want to buy a 1541, and another printer, and another this, and another that. So they would rather get, oh, hello, Sheldon. No, Sheldon, you're going to knock my light down. I don't know if people remember, but I have this cat. And he likes to come around oftentimes when I start recording. And he likes to say hello. Let me see. There's nowhere for him to really jump up here right now. Let me see what I can do. Sheldon. Sheldon, come here. Sheldon, can you get up here? Can you get up here? Can you get up here? Can you? Can you get up here? Oh, you can stretch up there. I don't know if you can jump up there. Do you want me to pick you up? Okay, hang on. Sheldon, I know. No. Here, get down and let me pick you up then. Come here. We'll say hello to all the people. Oh, this is Sheldon. Sheldon, hi. You okay? You okay? You comfy? You go? Oh, maybe Sheldon doesn't like the bright light. I don't know. Sheldon had nothing to do with the BusCard. Sheldon, his whole interest in anything Commodore is someplace to lie down. Hi. How you doing? And he purrs very loudly. You gonna bite my hat? No? You gonna bite my hat? What you doing? So, you just stay there, Sheldon. Back to the BusCard 2. There are many people. Oh, the other thing, of course, is cables. The cables, the IEEE cables. Hello. 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 Sheldon, you've had a rough day. Sheldon, Sheldon, do you want to get down? Do you want to get down? Do you want to go find Penny? We have another cat named Penny. They're brother and sister. Penny doesn't usually come around when I'm recording. But there's Sheldon. Okay, Sheldon, I'm telling a little story. Sheldon, why don't you go find Penny? There you go. Go find Penny. Go find Penny. Yes. No. Go find Penny. I know. No. Hi. Oh dear. Maybe Sheldon can jump up there. So. Hello, Sheldon. So back to the BusCard 2. So, yes, back to expense. If you got a Commodore 64, when it first came out in Canada, it was $899 plus tax. I don't remember what the tax rate was. Thank you, Sheldon. I need those notes there. Yes, I do. And if you already had a PET, it was, and you could hook up to an old TV, which is how I started. It was much more manageable if you had a way, for a reasonable price, to hook up your 4040, 8050, wait for it, 9090 hard drive, 9060 hard drive. Get this, the hard drives, which were some of the first hard drives available for, just little people using little computers. The 9060 was 5 megabytes. And the 9090, 7.5 screaming megabytes. Storage unheard of at that time. Wasn't it, Sheldon? Unheard of. Unheard of. Come here, Sheldon. Sheldon. Come on. Sheldon. No. Okay, Sheldon, you're getting into the danger zone here. There's lots of stuff here. So, and the IEEE cables. Okay, Sheldon, I think you're into the danger zone. So we're going to get down here. There you go. Go find Penny. Yes, I know. Go find Penny. Go find Penny. Bring Penny here. Maybe we'll talk to Penny. Don't rub yourself on the cord. Thank you. No, go find Penny. So, the IEEE cables, which I might, over here, have an example of. Excuse me. Sheldon, don't knock the tripod, please. Well, as always, I can sort of see what I want. But can I get it? I can. Okay, so this is not so helpful for what we're doing here. But we're not actually going to hook anything up, so it doesn't matter. This is an IEEE to IEEE cable. It would not hook up to a BusCard without some adapter, which I think now people are actually making adapters. This makes it possible for you to what they call the daisy chain. In other words, if you had your PET, or in this case your Commodore 64 with a BusCard 2, you could plug in a regular IEEE cable, which looked like an edge connector kind of thingy, or not, but something that would go on an edge connector, and on the end of the cable you would have, one of these. And then that would go on the disk drive, or the printer, or even the modem. Yes, there was something called the 8010 modem, IEEE. Can you imagine? When we first put up our first bulletin board, hi Sheldon, thank you. There were no modems that had a way to answer the phone, or detect a ring, or do anything. We had to build an answer circuit. I still have that one. Sometime perhaps I'll bring it up here. Anyway, so what would happen is these cables were maybe $100 each or so, maybe more. So you would have your Commodore 64 hooked up to your 4040, hooked up to your, say, 8010 modem, and also connected to your 8023P dot matrix printer. So you would have maybe 3 of these cables, so maybe $300 or more, depending. Also, the other advantage to the IEEE bus, rather than the bus, the way information is transferred between the Commodore 64 and the 1541 is speed. The IEEE bus was parallel. All the things would run beside each other. The serial bus, everything would run after each other. Anyway, it was much slower, much slower. So, anyway, I'm sure there were other people. I know there was another company called Rich Rail Telecommunications that made something called the C-Link, which was very much like the BusCard 2, but smaller, more compact. I don't think you needed a wire that went inside, at least on the original version. And they also made one for the Big 20, imagine. And these things seem to be all happening in and around Toronto. I am sure there are other people that made similar things. But in Toronto and in Southern Ontario, there was a lot of third-party development going on for the Commodore 64. A lot of that, of course, is due to T-Pug. Because T-Pug had a lot of people, and then people would get inspired, and they'd go off and do wonderful, magical things. Like make the BusCard 2. Oh, look at that. On the side of the BusCard 2 is a cartridge slot. So you could still plug a cartridge in for the BusCard 2 after you use the cartridge slot. Imagine. I knew that. I don't think I ever used it for that. So, somewhere I will look up where you have to plug this wire onto before I test it. As I remember, just to test it out to make sure it works, it really doesn't matter if the wire, it's not for power. It's something to do with something, which makes sense. I think maybe it was something to do with, you know what, I could say something. I don't remember at this moment. I'll have to look it up. So, the BusCard 2 and the C-Link and other IEEE devices were meant so that PET people could convert to the 64 and not spend tons and tons and tons of money on the slow 1541. Or the MPS 801 printer, which once again was slow, noisy. Did it print? Yes. Was it good? No. But it did print. So, I am going to look up the wire connection for this, and I'm going to get the cables together, and at some point I will try and test this to see if it works. The dip switches, by the way, are quite ingenious because on here, of course, you know devices 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, as well as for printers here, which is device 4. The dip switches allow you to intermix which kind of thing. So you could have this hooked up on a machine with a 4040 is device 8, an 8050 is device 9, an 8250 is device 10. There's no 11. Okay, I don't know. But anyway, you could have a 1541 hooked up and then have other devices, such as other disk drives that were other devices, and have them mix. So it didn't mean you couldn't use the serial bus. You could. It was rather ingenious. Made in Canada. And yes, it was actually made in Canada. Put together, assembled in Canada, downtown Toronto. By batteries included. Who, I think the best thing they ever came out with was Paperclip, which was a fine word processor written by Steve Douglas. But that's another story, as they say. So, at some point, soon, I will get a 64 ready. I will get an IEEE cable. I will have a disk drive ready, maybe other things, and I will test to see if this sort of sun-beaten, missing a couple of feet, they had feet on them so they would line up nicely with the port, I'll live. Anyway, we'll give this a test and see how it works. I don't know how many were made, but they sold a lot. They were highly sought after, they were highly prized, and they're good. Oh, the other thing that was probably good for them in the BusCard 2, they also made, batteries included, made a system called the Arbiter, which would allow classrooms, see, disk drives were expensive. Dual disk drives were expensive. So, if you had a whole class full of Commodore 64s, there was no way you were going to get a whole bunch of 1541s. So they had this system that would allow a whole bunch of machines to hook up to one dual drive. Because most people weren't doing a whole lot of disk activity, and they could just come and go with a disk and save and put things away. And I'm not sure if somehow the BusCard came from that or was part of that. I don't know. I don't remember. I'll find out. So, Canadian technology in the form of the batteries included, BusCard 2. So stay tuned, and at some point we'll have a look. We'll see if we can get this up and running and see if we can talk to drives, well, maybe I'll get the 8010 out and see if we can talk to the modem, and maybe a printer. I do have a very, very, very old Commodore printer. Very old. I've hardly ever but seen the one that I have of it. I could tell you the model, but not today. So, I have some things to gather before we can experiment. So, that is all I have to say at this moment about the BusCard 2 and other such Commodore matters. Oh, and yes, by the way, I was out in the garage again, and I haven't gathered all the 1541s that are out there, but there are more. Of course there are. So, it's not hoarding if you're organized. I'm still not organized. But one day I will be. So, until we meet again, farewell for now.